Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a story that has literally haunted detectives, forensic experts, and honestly, the entire American public for more than 6 decades. It's a case that perfectly captures both the frustrating limits of traditional detective work and the absolute awe-inspiring power of modern forensic science. We're looking at one of America's most enduring true crime mysteries, a case that, for the longest time, was known simply as the boy in the box.
All right, let's set the scene. It's February 25th, 1957, in this quiet, wooded area along Susquehanna Road in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. A young man is just driving by when he spots a cardboard box discarded near the side of the road. Well, curiosity kind of gets the better of him, right? He stops, takes a look inside, and makes a terrifying discovery that kicks off a 65-year investigation. Wrapped in a blanket inside that box is the body of a small boy. The police are immediately called to the scene, and they quickly realize they're dealing with a murder. But there's a massive, glaring problem right from the jump. I mean, put yourself in their shoes for a second. Imagine finding a child with no name, no missing person report, and absolutely nobody coming forward to claim him. What do you even do? Where do you begin? This was the sheer wall of anonymity that the Philadelphia police slammed right into on day one. A child had been murdered, but seemingly nobody in the whole world was looking for him.
Okay, let's dive right into part 1, a horrifying discovery. So the victim was this little boy, and medical examiners estimated him to be somewhere between 4 and 6 years old. He had blonde hair and blue eyes. He'd simply been wrapped up in a blanket and discarded in the woods inside a cardboard box. The initial assessment painted this really bleak picture of a child who had basically just been thrown away. But as investigators looked a bit closer at the boy's remains, they found something incredibly baffling. They discovered this heartbreaking contradiction. On one hand, the boy's hair had been freshly cut, and his fingernails were neatly trimmed. Someone had actually taken the time to groom him. Yet his body showed these severe bruises and injuries, which made it obvious he had suffered terrible abuse before his death. It just didn't add up. Someone had cared for his appearance, but someone had also violently ended his life.
Which brings us to Section 2, Clues and Dead Ends. 400,000. Just wrap your head around that number for a second. That is how many flyers bearing this little boy's face were printed and blasted across the entire United States. Newspapers nationwide published his photograph. The logic was pretty simple. Surely a parent, a teacher, a neighbor, or just someone would recognize this kid and come forward. Authorities literally blanketed the country with his image. But amazingly, not a single person came forward to claim him. So, with nobody recognizing his face, detectives had to lean entirely on physical clues. They went through every single item from that scene with a fine-tooth comb. They tracked the cardboard box and found out it was originally used to package a baby bassinet from a local department store. They traced the manufacturer of the blanket he was wrapped in. They studied his clothing, his shoes, and even analyzed the food found in his stomach in just extraordinary detail. But man, every single piece of evidence that seemed promising at first ultimately just hit a brick wall. Investigators were out there scouring schools, churches, hospitals, orphanages, foster homes, you name it. They checked thousands of missing child reports from all over the country. And as the months turned into years, desperation really started to set in. Anonymous letters flooded the precinct. Psychics were calling and offering bizarre theories. People even confessed to the crime who had absolutely nothing to do with it. But despite all of this monumental effort, it yielded exactly 0 answers. Moving on to Section 3, the controversial confession. Years down the line, a woman, who the public only ever knew by the letter M, contacted investigators with this absolutely shocking story. She claimed that back when she was a kid, her highly abusive parents had secretly brought the little boy into their home. According to her, the boy was regularly beaten and mistreated by her parents. She recounted that one night, after a particularly violent assault, the child died. Panicking, she said her parents put his body in that cardboard box and abandoned him in the woods. Now, as you can imagine, this confession completely divided the detective squad. Some investigators firmly believed M's story because, well, parts of her account perfectly matched case details that had never been released to the public. But on the flip side, other detectives pointed out these glaring inconsistencies. And most importantly, there was absolutely 0 physical evidence to back up her claims. Ultimately, her story couldn't be definitively confirmed or disproven. The lead evaporated, leaving investigators exactly where they started. All right, part 4, the DNA breakthrough. So we have this agonizing passage of time, stretching from 1957 through decades of literal dead ends. But here's the crucial part. During all those quiet years, new investigators were constantly reopening files, updating facial reconstructions, re-examining fingerprints, and, thankfully, carefully preserving the boy's DNA samples. They knew technology was always evolving, and they never gave up hope that one day forensic science might just catch up to the mystery. And you know what? That is exactly what happened. Here is the three-step scientific process that achieved what traditional shoe leather detective work couldn't do for 65 years. Step 1, scientists successfully extracted that carefully preserved DNA. Step 2, using advanced genetic genealogy, investigators built an enormous family tree by finding distant relatives who had submitted their DNA to public databases. And Step 3, piece by piece, they painstakingly worked backward through that tree until they finally pinpointed the child's biological parents. Finally, all the puzzle pieces snapped into place. In December 2022, the Philadelphia police called this massive, highly anticipated press conference. They announced the breakthrough that the world and generations of detectives had waited decades to hear. The little boy in the box finally had his name back. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli. For the very first time since that freezing February day back in 1957, the child who had become a national symbol of anonymous tragedy was no longer unknown. Which leads us to our final section, Part 5, an unsolved mystery. Identifying him obviously answered one massive question, but honestly, it just opened the door to a bunch of agonizing new ones. Like, why was Joseph never reported missing by his family? What exactly happened during those final, brutal days of his short life? And the absolute biggest question of all, who is his killer? Investigators have actually been deliberately holding back some information about his family tree, hoping that someone out there with knowledge of the case will finally come forward to fill in these blanks. And sadly, that brings us to the really tragic reality of where things stand today. The mystery that started with a cardboard box in a lonely Philadelphia forest, it still has no known killer. His name has been restored, absolutely, but justice has not. The case of the boy in the box remains officially unsolved well over half a century later. This one little boy, who is completely forgotten, is now known and remembered all over the globe. But until the whole truth is finally uncovered, this is going to remain one of the most heartbreaking, unsolved true crime mysteries in American history. So I'll leave you with this final thought to ponder. Who is responsible for the death of Joseph Augustus Zarelli? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking questions, keep seeking the truth, and I'll catch you next time.